Hi, I'm Becky. I'm the Charity Hub Coordinator at Living Options Devon. This is my colleague Neil, Marketing Assistant.
Hi.
We are here today to talk to Katherine about fibromyalgia, and we are going to increase people's knowledge and understanding of the condition. So I just want to talk to Katherine a little bit more about it. We'll ask some few questions and have a bit of a chit chat, all right?
Yeah.
Lovely. So I'll start us off with the first question. Very simple. What is, well, I say simple, but what is fibromyalgia?
It's a chronic illness that's characterised by persistent and constant musculoskeletal pain, joint pain, and it's not rooted in physical injury or illness or disease. There's also joint stiffness, constant fatigue, got tender spots around the body, so even a very, very light touch is absolute agony. Also brings with it some sleep problems. So one of the problems with fibro is when you're asleep, when you don't have fibro, when you're asleep, you get the mild level sleep and you also get the deep sleep, which is what you need to properly recover for the next day. But with fibro, there's bursts of awake-like activity in the brain that means you don't get that deep sleep, so you can wake up after 7, 8, 9 hours and still feel like you've been hit by a bus.
Right, okay.
Sure.
So that's a real problem. So it can lead to mobility problems, concentration problems, loss of balance, joints giving out. It messes with your sleep, which then obviously further impacts on your concentration, your ability to process and retain information.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap of it with ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome. Some people have one, some people have the other, some people have both.
And you've been dealt with both, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So what are the, you say that there's a crossover between that and ME, what are the similarities there?
There's the pain and there's the fatigue. I mean, obviously the fatigue is the overwhelming #1 characteristic for ME. So sometimes some people with fibro don't have the same levels of fatigue. But also with ME, there's quite a lot of particularly underarm pain. So the lymph nodes that get a bit swollen.
Right.
And recurrent sore throats, that's a thing, which at the moment with COVID is always slightly stressful because I get random sore throats as part of the ME. And then I'm sat there thinking, is it COVID? Is it just the ME playing up?
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's a lot of crossover. The key difference is the presence or absence of the tender spots.
Right, okay.
Okay, good to know.
And what actually causes fibromyalgia?
Currently, they have no idea.
Oh, really?
Right.
The working theory is that there's a fault with the pain signals between the brain and the body, and there's some kind of chemical imbalance and something's gone wrong. It can often be triggered by illness, injury or a major life event. So quite often there have been people who've developed it after a car accident.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe they've just had a baby or they've just gone through a really messy divorce. And there's suspicion that there is some genetic predisposition to it. So you might be fine, you might have that predisposition but be fine.
Right, okay. And how is fibromyalgia diagnosed, and when were you diagnosed with it?
So I developed it about late 2006, early 2007, but I wasn't diagnosed with it until April 2009.
Right, okay.
And that's actually quite common.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's actually no definitive blood test or scan or any other test that can definitively identify. Rheumatoid arthritis, there are specific blood tests. With other things, there are specific scans they can do, like osteoarthritis, but there's nothing like that for fibro. So they'll start off doing the tests for all the other things to eliminate those.
Yeah.
And
Process of elimination rather than actually pinpointing that one particular.
I mean, the hope is in the future maybe they'll eventually be able to have something, which would be wonderful. Because also at the moment there are quite a few people out there that, because there's no definitive test, they believe it's not real, including medical practitioners.
Do you know if there's quite a high percentage of people that get misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia because there isn't a definitive diagnosis?
Yes, and quite often there are some people who don't necessarily have fibro, but it's like, well, we don't know what else to put on, what other label, because it's none of these other things.
So yeah, through the process of elimination, they've just ended up with fibro.
So you do all those tests, and then it's like, well, if it's none of those things, you usually see a rheumatologist, and they'll look at pain present in particular locations. So it's got to have been present in a certain number of locations for at least 3 months constantly. And then, although it varies from practitioner to practitioner, there's often something called the tender point test. So there's specific points around the body that are particularly tender.
Right.
And so they will test and press those tender spots to see how you react. And for me, my biggest tender spot is actually my elbows.
Oh, really?
Which is really annoying when you're trying to rest your arms on something.
I can imagine.
And it's rheumatology, not neurology, is it?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That potentially may change in the future, depending if they make advances in diagnosis techniques and so on.
Mm.
So what she did with me, when I told her my worst tender point is my elbow, so the very first one she went for was my elbows,
Right.
which in some ways was like, oh my goodness, this is agony. But I think she knew what she was doing because she went for those first, it kind of set the others off.
Yeah.
Which, although very painful, made it a lot easier to diagnose than if she'd gone for something else.
Yeah.
That's good.
And how does fibromyalgia affect you in your day-to-day life and the impact that it has on normal things?
I'm in constant pain. I'm in pain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every second of every day. And it's actually quite substantial now. A lot of people assume my pain levels aren't very high because I don't take any painkillers. It's actually
impressive, yeah.
But it's actually because the milder stuff, like the over-the-counter stuff, does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So there's no point. The stronger stuff just turns me into a total zombie and has a minimal impact on the pain. So I'd actually rather be in more pain, but actually be able to have a life.
With it.
Yeah.
Some people prefer to be in less pain and not do anything. Me, I've always been so active and involved in so many things that I'd actually rather take the pain. So because of it, it's particularly bad on my ankles, so I can walk about 5 metres without it getting overwhelming. So when I'm out and about, I always use a wheelchair. So also, if I'm sat in the same position too long, my joint seize up. But at the same time, if I move around too much, the pain levels increase.
Mm.
I am always tired. I actually can't remember what it's like to not be tired.
Right, so you just kind of got used to it, I guess. Then.
Yeah, you kind of, I don't know about develop a tolerance for it, but then it gets to a point where, to an extent, you can kind of tune it out, and sometimes that has to be a conscious process, especially at the start, so a lot of it can be practice. I do struggle with my balance, so I nearly fall pretty much every day.
Right.
At home it's not so bad because it's carpeted and I can grab onto furniture and stuff to steady myself, but outdoors it's a lot more unsteady.
Yeah.
Have you got a bit of a setup at home then of I don't know, maybe rails or something just to kind of help with balance and stuff?
I've got a grab rail in my shower.
Yeah.
And I've also got a shower stool in my shower because I can't stand for very long.
Sure.
Yeah.
In my kitchen I've got it's not sort of a medical equipment chair, but I've just got one of those higher chairs, and it has to be a chair rather than a stool because if there's no back, I am off backwards because of my balance. But I've got sort of a higher chair that's probably about that sort of height, so just higher than the table, which means I can sit on that and do the washing up, I can cook, just because I can't stand for long periods.
Sure.
Yeah.
It also messes with my concentration, so sometimes I have days that I just can't focus on anything, I can't take anything in. And also, because I'm also autistic, if I'm having a rough day with the fibro, that means I generally find it a lot harder to tolerate even minor problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it messes with the autism as well.
Yeah. And is there anything that we can do, people in general, to help with this kind of invisible condition?
First and foremost, believe us. The number of people who just straight up don't believe us, especially because it fluctuates. So the weather really affects me. So low pressure, wet, damp, cold, they all make it a lot worse. So I've had occasions where people see me out and about on a really sunny day and they're like, you've got lots of energy, and then the next time it's raining and the air pressure's down really low and I just can't do anything. They're like, but you were fine yesterday. And so many people have this experience.
Yeah. Because
it's not static.
Yeah, so do your day-to-day kind of impact, is it affected by if you have a bad sleep?
Yes,
is that the main kind of cause of when you have your up and down days?
For me, it tends to be bad night's sleep and the weather. So one thing that's really big with managing things like fibro and ME is pacing yourself. So you do a task, you have a break, you do another task, you have a break. And on the good days, it can be really, really easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I've got all this energy, I'm going to do this, this, this and this, and then you're wiped out for the next week. It's actually better to go, well, yes, I've got lots of energy, I'm going to do that, have a rest and do that, but those can wait till tomorrow, and it just keeps you on that even. It's better to keep on that even keel rather than the peaks and troughs, because that just messes with you physically and mentally. I find one thing, when you've had something like fibro for quite a while, people are constantly coming up thinking they've got this brilliant idea. It's like, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Please don't say that to us, because I can pretty much guarantee we've heard it before, we've tried it before, and it just does not work. Like, the number one tends to be yoga. It seems to be everyone's go-to. Yoga, and then, so I've got a friend who's also got fibro, and she's vegetarian. She's been told that she should stop being vegetarian and start eating meat because it will cure her fibro. To which she points to me. I've been told I should give up meat and go vegetarian and it will cure my fibro, at which point I point to her. So it can be quite funny when it's the both of us, we just kind of look at each other and it's like, that doesn't work. So also try and read up about the condition yourself, because we've got limited energy and it can be exhausting having to rehash the same information when we're actually better off spending that energy on other things.
Definitely. Brilliant. Have you got anything else that you'd like to add? Because we've gone through kind of our questions. Have you got anything else that you'd like to add about fibro?
I think trying to keep some level of physical activity can be quite beneficial, but you've got to be quite careful, and it's going to depend. Different things work for different people. So I do quite a bit of wheelchair sport, but again, I've still got to be careful that I don't overdo it. So I play wheelchair badminton, so I might take part for a bit, sit out for a bit, and then go back in. Whereas other people can just do the straight the entire time without stopping. I can't do that if I want to actually be able to do anything the next day. And so a lot of low impact stuff can really help. They often recommend swimming because the water takes you away. I personally can't do that because I'm short-sighted, and taking my glasses off, I can't see anything, and I just can't. And it messes.
Prescription goggles?
They are exceptionally expensive.
Are they?
And also, and then this is where the autism comes into play, I can't stand the feel
of course, having something on your face,
Can't stand it, so I just couldn't go down that path. And also, the water in a lot of swimming pools tends to be quite cold, which actually makes your joints seize up. So if you want to do swimming, you've got to check the pool temperature. And different things.
All these factors you've got to think about, isn't it?
And actually, COVID has made it really hard, because at the start of the first lockdown, all of a sudden there was this explosion of home workouts online. But there was hardly anything that was suitable for anyone with any disabilities, any mobility problems. And I'm sat there like, well, that's great for you, but I can't do that, I can't do that. There's a bit now, but...
That's, I guess, Living Options have got, various well-being support, haven't we, which might be able to help with that.
I mean, you're the project administrator for our Deaf Get Active project, aren't you? And so...
I spent quite a lot of time researching accessible workouts, so accessible for deaf people and accessible for people with physical disabilities.
We've done some filming here before, haven't we, about seated exercising and stuff, so it's all of those kind of things, and you can find that all on the YouTube channel and on the website. And what advice could you give to people out in the public, Katherine? Just some short, snappy advice about how to kind of manage a fibro, or if you get a diagnosis of it.
Don't be afraid to use aids and adaptations. Like, some people see getting a wheelchair or a walking stick or a walking frame as like giving up. Actually, it's the most liberating thing. Previously, I just had my walking stick and I could hobble a bit, but I was being overtaken by 80-year-old ladies with Zimmer frames, and I was 23. It was just a bit like, I should not be at this point. And so one of my friends who'd already got her fibro diagnosis, she got a wheelchair, and she said it made a huge difference. So I went down that route. I tried out short mobility chair initially. I was like, I have energy, I can do stuff. And my wheelchair is my freedom. If I didn't have it, I'd basically be housebound. But because I have it, I can go out and do stuff, So don't be afraid to use aids. Aids are there for a reason, and they are there to make your life easier. Use them. Yes, people will probably stare, particularly if you're a younger person and you've got a walking stick, because society associates walking sticks with older people, but quite frankly, forget their staring, forget them, ignore them.
Also, I think you've mentioned to me before, like in a supermarket, for example, and you've got something that you need to get on the top shelf and you stand up out of your wheelchair and then people kind of take a double look to think, hang on a minute.
There's this concept that any wheelchair user is completely unable to stand or walk, and that's not actually the case.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact statistic, and it's quite an old one that I saw, so it might have changed slightly. But it's something like 85% of wheelchair users can stand and or walk a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you see someone stand up out of a wheelchair, don't stare, don't go, it's a miracle! Unless you're with them and they're your friend or something, and you know it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Katherine.
Yeah,
I think it's probably going to help people really understand, hopefully understand and get a little bit more knowledge about fibro as a condition and how we can help as an organisation, but also how people can kind of deal with it. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the time.